Hello and welcome to the AutoTalk Weekly Wrap, episode 70. Now, if you're wondering why we are 6 minutes late, it's because we started this thing, we got like 6 minutes in, and realized that the go live button hadn't worked, and so we were talking to ourselves, acting all like we were presenting to people, which is hilarious. Anyway, I'll bring in my team and we'll see if we can recreate the same magic. First in, Graham McDonald from Croydon Wholesalers, independent man about town, all those kind of things. And Amos Banbury from Better. How are you guys going today?
Good, thank you.
Oh, I've lost all the magic now, Richard. I've got nothing else to say.
Well, what I can do is I can look fake shocked again. Because what we were talking about was, as we went to air originally, my general manager, Deborah, is out picking up a car for me this morning. Now, she's used to buzzing around in the usual electric cars and stuff that I drive. Today, I'm just making sure I reset my expectations by driving a petrol car, and she's gone and picked up a BMW M2. And so she's sitting there sending me all these text messages like, awesome, wow. And I'm going, God, what's wrong? Because, you know, everyone knows what it's like, particularly the wife. They'll send you the "we need to talk" text exactly when you can't talk. And it could be devastating, or it could be that they just want to change the colour of the couch cushions. Yeah, I'm sure you've both experienced that before.
Yes, and putting that back to a dealership perspective too, it's always when you get that urgent message back from one of your team, and you're in the middle of nowhere, and this urgent message comes through about a car or a customer, and it turns out that it's just, did you want 3/4 of a tank in that or 2/3 of a tank in that? Are you sure that one takes 95? I'm just not too sure. It's like, yeah, well, I'm actually just stepping onto a flight to Barbados, and the customs guy's going through my bag, but I'll just think about that for a second. You know what? I think you should put 98 in that car instead. It's the equivalent of that, isn't it, Amos? You have those moments, I'm sure, where you think, have you nothing better to talk about with me?
So good. That's what happens when someone gets into a petrol car. They're a beautiful thing.
I'm with you on that one. I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. You say that, but I mean, but if I go and Google that BMW M2 0 to 100, let's have a look. It is.
Who cares? You've got this obsession with 0 to 100. Nobody cares. It's just a statistic that the distributors. Really? Okay, go on to real life driving, Richard. How many times do people get on the Northwestern Motorway and go, I'm just going to see if I can eclipse my 0 to 100 time on the Lincoln Road on-ramp this morning?
Well,
Never.
0 to 100 is the only measure you can actually really have fun with in a car in New Zealand.
It's the only measure you can have fun with in an electric car, Richard.
Oh. You say that now, but Graham, I bought a draggy. So a draggy is a little GPS meter you stick on the dashboard, and you go and run some tests, and it gives you literally like an old school timing slip for your car. And I'm sure you'll be wanting to have that play with that in the Mustang at some point if your heart can stand it.
No, not really. The Mustangs are pants when it comes to acceleration and things, really. It's just a big hunk of melted down railway wagons that Ford beat into the shape of a car and then flog off to middle-aged crisis men like me. I'm not pretending it isn't what it isn't.
How important is 0 to 100 to your Ducati buys, Amos?
Yeah, like motorbike. That's what I was going to say. You need to get on a motorbike. Yeah.
Yep. Haven't driven one in a while. It'll happen. But I was offered a ride on a new BMW electric scooter the other day, but that's probably not quite the same thing. Though it does look very cool. But yeah, anyway, just looking at the numbers. So that BMW M1 is 4.10 seconds 0 to 100. The car I've got over Christmas this year, the BYD Seal, is 3.8 seconds 0 to 100. And I think the MG4 X-Power, which is under $70,000 or like 63 grand with a rebate, is 3.6 seconds 0 to 100. Well, you got to admit that's fun. That's going to be fun.
Yeah.
You can just enjoy your holiday with your wife next to you going.
My daughter love. Well, look, my daughter is very much at either end of the vehicle scale. Okay, so on one hand, she loves it when we go in an EV, and I'll do lots of little like 0 to 50, 0 to 100 extreme acceleration things. She's in her car seat, so she gets pushed back. She loves it, finds it hilarious. Wants to do 5 between here and daycare. But what she really likes is what she calls truck, i.e., any American pickup. So I'm not sure what you whispered in her ear, Graham, but
she gets it. Girls know. Girls know.
Exactly. Now, Amos, so we allowed to talk about what you're up to over the last week. I gather you headed over to Australia for a little bit.
Yeah. I sort of doubled it up. I went to the MotoGP. That was amazing.
It was good.
Yeah, real good. I think just such an appreciation of those guys and their skill set. I think like when you go watch motor racing, I'm always like, man, I love a race car. And then when I was at the MotoGP, I did not once think I would like to get a motorbike and put it on a track. They're just unreal, so fast.
Have you done that before? I mean, do you do much riding? You own a motorbike dealership, but do you actually do much riding?
A little bit, just to, good to know the product and that sort of thing. Obviously, so you can get into conversations where you can cover different things. But I definitely, it's not a absolute skill set of mine by any means. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
and you were over there with Ducati. Were you with other dealers? Any dealer goss or any dealer insights you picked up while you hanging out with them?
Yeah, obviously the Ducati stuff, we had each branch there. Ducati's obviously super strong in that sort of stuff. There's all the other brands there as well. But the dealers are they definitely felt, I guess, and those Ducati numbers, they're all public, that sort of stuff, new regos, definitely that dip through winter. I think a lot of that Ducati client, probably high-end motorbike client that's spending sort of, over 40, 50K on a bike, during that winter period, they're in Fiji or they're overseas. And but definitely the demand or the inquiry has definitely bounced back over the last month compared to that second and third quarter of the year. Yeah, and they sort of feel the same in Aussie. We definitely mimic their market as well with that sort of luxury. I'm guessing it's going to be the same with boats, caravans, those sort of things as well. Yeah.
Nice to be some. Graham, where did you winter this year? Fiji, Barbados?
Henderson, Richard. Henderson.
Yeah.
Well, there's a caravan park down the road. It's very nice. Most of the fees there are paid by Ministry of Social Development, so that's a win. I was going to say, Amos, though, surely one of the bucket list things for a man who likes bikes, and I've always thought it'd be a really cool thing to do, is the Isle of Man TT. Have you ever gone across and watched that?
No, I haven't, but a lot of the guys there had done that. And I think the appreciation, it seems like it's even crazier again, because it's just that, level of difference around, track to street to road, that sort of thing. So it was definitely one thing that was a real hot topic over there from conversation. Yeah.
An interesting thing.
Stuff.
Yeah, interesting thing going to an event, I guess, with the mindset where I think someone dies pretty much every year. They don't really have non-fatal years, do they, at Isle of Man?
Yeah, it's just crazy. But yeah, everyone's got their passion and their vice, and it's amazing.
Fantastic. Yeah, cool. Excellent. And look, it's a bit of a short week this week because of Labour weekend. Everyone's still at the batch, I can tell, because the queue at the coffee wagon in Mangawhai is about 5 times longer than it normally is. And I was gonna put you guys on the spot. It was minor pre-warning. And I've been watching a lot of TikToks lately because apparently I'm 17 years old, but more for professional research. And there's a lot of people from dealerships on there now, particularly in America, giving out tips, which most of them are useless because they're American tips anyway, and half of them bullcrap. But telling odd stories from the yard, customers that were just that little bit too demanding, or people had walked out of the yard, brought back demolished cars, and asked for a refund. Have you guys got any similar stories from your experience? You've spent a lot of years on the yard, Graham. I'm not saying you're old, but you've spent a fair number of years on the yard. Amos, you've spent a few years on the yard. You must have something funny to tell us.
I'll give you a true story.
You want to kick this off, Graham?
Yeah, okay. I'll give you two true stories actually. The first one happened a number of years ago. We used to, as you probably know, we cut our teeth in the R32 Skyline market, S30, S14 Silvias. We were one of the earlier big importers of JDM sports cars, and we had sold a S14 Silvia Turbo to a young chappie, manual, obviously.
And he took it away, serviced it perfectly, and respected it completely, and drove it to church every Sunday.
Oh, absolutely. He practically went from here to the Bible college down the road and back. That was all it was. Anyway, he only had it for a couple of days, and his father rang us up and complained and said he was really angry on the phone, like one of those really angry phone calls. And I won't go into the language of it. We were just basically bad people. We'd sold his car at dud, the clutch was stuffed. And we ripped his son off, and we were just a bunch of you-know-whats, and he was going to take us to the cleaners, and he was going to do this and taking advantage of his son and poor little Jimmy. Anyway, and just bear in mind, this is a true story without a word of a lie, okay? At that stage, we used to have a big workshop down the road. We used to have the Skyline parked down. We were racing that, and we had our chief technician down there, Glenn Suckling, working on stuff. We said, look, bring the car in. We need to have a look at it. We've only had it for 2 days. Bring this thing in so we can see what's going on. We'd all driven that car prior to delivery. We knew what it was like. We knew exactly what sort of condition it was in, but, what on earth's happened here? Take it down to the workshop. So Glenn puts it up on the hoist. The clutch is stuffed. Clutch is absolutely stuffed. And the father and the son are down there, and the father's just going off, and we knew, and we'd taken it out beforehand and done laps around Henderson in it and done skids, and we'd stuffed the car, and he was really angry, and the son's just standing here like this, just keep on backwards. And so Glenn puts it up on the hoist, and there is just rubber everywhere under the guards, like everywhere. And Glenn says, look, this thing has just been doing sustained burnouts. You can see there's not a lot of tread on the back tyres. There's just rubber everywhere. What's going on? Oh, well, it was, you guys took it out beforehand and you done burnouts and you ripped my son off, you bastards. You ripped my son off. I'll see you in court, you bastards. So timing.
You do that too well, Graham.
Timing is everything. My phone rings. Back in those days, I think it was like one of those little Nokia flips, and it rings, and it's the caretaker of there's a Dutch retirement village up the road from us called Onsdorp. It's about 3 or 4 k's away, and it's a big complex set out, just single little level terrace houses and lots of little streets and bits and pieces. And it's the caretaker from Onsdorp wanting to know if we're the owner of a vehicle with this particular registration number. Okay. Look up on the hoist. Said, well, what would you like to know? How can I help you? This is in the days to do manual change of ownerships. We used to do, batches of them every couple of days or so. And he said, well, I'm just doing this as a courtesy. I'd like to know who was the driver of the vehicle, because we're just laying a complaint with the police. There was a group of vehicles, 3 vehicles here the night before last. We're through the village at 2 a.m, sustained, he called them, I don't know, wheelies or something, ran around the village. It went on for an hour, terrorised the residents, but they've managed to capture one of them on a security camera, and these are the details. And before they go to the police, would do the courtesy of us explaining who the driver of it was, and this is a car dealership. What's going on?
Woo!
So that little moment, and I just thought, hold on a minute, you can tell the story to somebody else. And I handed the phone to the father, and I said, it's for you.
How apologetic was Dad after that?
Not at all. So the phone call took about 10 minutes, and then we all sort of looked at each other. I knew. Nobody else knew. I hadn't said anything to anybody else. Just this conversation was taking place on the phone, if you understand. And the father looked at the son and he said, get the car off the hoist. Thanks, guys. And they both hopped into the car without a word, and they just, father driving, stuttering with the clutch, drives out. We never heard from him again. There's not another word spoken. No apology, no nothing. It's just like thinking, timing is everything.
So good.
Any S13s in your history, Amos?
Now, I had a few of them, but I I guess I've got a lot of stories, but a lot of them probably can't be told. I'm sure we're all in the same boat. But I have one specific one. When I was about 19, I worked at this place that had multi-dealerships. And so we would have a stock list of all the cars that obviously each yard had. And in one particular yard at another place, there was the buyer for the group. And he also obviously managed the yard, had a bit of a share and so on. And there was this one, it was a C200 with brown interior, or, an off tan. And it was coming up to 1 year old. And I was 19, I just got out of grooming cars and just got into sales. So I thought it would be funny if I sent a birthday cake down to the yard for the car, because it's going to hit 100 days in stock. 1 year in stock. So I sent this birthday cake down, and word got out, and everyone just thought I was hilarious. And then I got a phone call from the manager of that yard and the buyer. And it was at that stage I learned a lot of words on one phone call that I'd never known, and I didn't do that again. So that was, but it really, my sort of position changed after that, and everyone thought I was quite funny. So that was, it was definitely worth it.
You are funny, Amos. You are funny. That is classic. That is classic. Oh man!
I must tell one more that I can now tell, because I think we're outside of the statute of limitations. But and again, we're all adults here. But many years ago, we also used to lease out covert cars to the police. So the local commanders, they had a need for coverts in surveillance operations, deep cover, that sort of stuff. So we used to lease out cars, and usually trades and nondescript vehicles. I mean, it was a win-win. So they got access to vehicles. We supplied the servicing and bits and pieces for them, and they changed them every 2, 3, 4 months, depending on what the requirements were. If they got burnt with the car, then it was changed over time. Once we only had a car out for a week before it got burnt. When I say burnt, it spotted, identified, and then away it went. Anyway, one of the vehicles we loaned out at one point was a Skyline R32, and this is when they were using them out of the North Harbour branch, or the Harbour Bridge branch. And just an R32 Skyline. And we had a phone call from the district commander based out of there, demanding to know, because the vehicle's obviously registered in our name. It didn't say, New Zealand Police written across the front of the ownership papers in case somebody did a rego check back in those days. The district commander ringing up, demanding to know who was in possession of that particular vehicle from Croydon, what on earth we were doing inside the base at the Harbour Bridge Police Depot, doing donuts in the middle of the car park.
It's so good.
Said, well, I don't know about that, but you probably want to have a bit of a chat in the office next door to the people running the covert surveillance team about the who from your particular force was driving that vehicle, because I'd like to know too.
Oh, classic. Yeah. That reminds me of the one of the first big stories I did when I first started working as a industry journalist for a publication with a very similar name to the one that I have now. Back in start of 2000, first couple of weeks, and this big story came through that I think the police kind of wanted us to do it, but I think they were trying to identify some of the vehicles. They wanted a bit of industry help, but basically they'd busted this big ring that was based out of a parts operation in Mount Wellington that had been importing Subarus, particularly nice Subarus, out of Japan, that either weren't legitimately allowed to be registered or something, whatever the deal was. And then they were putting VIN numbers from stolen Subarus in New Zealand on them. So they were basically Frankensteining these cars. And they'd caught these three or four people, a couple of prominent businessmen, and a former police officer. I think at the time was like the gate security guard for the Sultan of Brunei or something like that when he had his house in Auckland. And it was a big number of cars. And so I arranged to meet with the detective working the case. Met him in town. Discovered that it's probably changed now, but back then the actual detectives and the stolen vehicle squad running around and used import legacies because of course you do if you're legacy turbos. Of course you did back then if you were dealing with stolen cars, about the only thing that could keep up with them. And went down there and he took me on the shed in Mount Eden to go and look at these cars that they were working with. And I walked in, because we hadn't talked about the case yet, walked in and thought, these cars look familiar. And I started talking about who was involved in the case. And it turns out that I was actually part of it. No, I wasn't part of the actual theft or so forth. The guy one of the owners of the company that was doing it at the time was running a renovation business as well. As a young guy trying to save up to go to journalism school, I'd gone and worked with him. And I had been through the shed, the business, when they were starting to do these cut and shuts on this car. And I'd been taken through half the details of the cars. They were buying stuff like pre-production testing WRX STIs that could never be registered on the road and importing to New Zealand. At the time, I remember thinking, how can you register these on the road? And it turns out that 3 or 4 years later, being taken to sit down at a desk with a cop who wanted to talk to me further, that I was learning exactly how they were getting those pre-production safaris on the road in New Zealand. Yeah, still did the story. It was a good story, but they did some prison time. So,
bit close to home.
Yes, yeah. So,
did they track down all the cars in the end, or?
Yeah, I think they did. Yeah, they were tracking down a lot of them, but it was a really interesting case. I could probably dig up the link if you're really interested, but it was so that would have been 2000 that happened. It was a big number of cars. Yeah, the time I guess when I was working with them, I knew that something clearly iffy was going on. Was they had an NSX, but they had 2 NSXs, one with a front shunt, one with a rear shunt. And as it was described to me at the time, very crudely, was they were riveting and bonding the two together.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's just that ain't going to work out well for anybody. What's going on in Dealerland, Richard?
Not a lot, because everyone is on holiday or wrapping up for the year or panicking about how many EVs they've got to get rid of before the end of the year. That certainly seems to be a bit of the amount of discounting going on there. I actually had a chat to, I haven't seen the story yet, but to News Hub, TV3 News the other day about that. A lot of cars out there, a lot of discounting. I think a lot of that's down to just people not wanting to get stuck with vehicles when the rebate runs out. And some companies that are stuck with a lot of vehicles that were kind of spec'd in correctly for New Zealand to get under the rebate level. Like, anyone being tempted by that $49,000 electric ute?
We had that conversation last week about that.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
And I'm just around the corner from an LDV dealership, and I must admit I haven't seen transport loads of those going past any time last week.
Do you know if it's bumped their numbers?
Haven't seen the results yet. We'll know by the end of this week. They've already put out the figures. No doubt they'll sell a few of those. I sit there looking at that price going, could be tempted. It would make a great yard ute, Amos.
Yeah.
Couple of bucks.
Somebody used Ranger. That'd be pretty good too.
But you've got to put petrol in the tank of the used Ranger. Diesel.
Last I looked, when you plugged your T60 into the wall, the electricity didn't come free, and nor will the road user on it next year either. But I'm just saying.
No. Okay. What's better, Graham? Buying power that's coming out of a South Island hydro dam, and don't give me that coal crap, because it's like barely 10% if you're lucky is coming out of the coal plant, or having someone in the Middle East pull it out of the ground, probably start a bit of a war over it, chuck on a ship, sending it halfway around the world, probably paying someone in Singapore as well to play around with it, then getting it on another ship, halfway around the world again, and then paying an Australian company to pump it into your car.
If you want to play that game, I like lithium. Where does that come from?
Salt water.
Do we have any of that in New Zealand?
We do, actually.
Do we have a lithium mine in New Zealand?
Well, so they were doing trials, they had some planning permission in place for lithium ion. Literally, they just hang spats down into the ground, into the water like a mussel farm, and collect it there. So, Yeah.
So the answer then is no, I gather. No, they don't. No, they don't. I mean, we do have oil offshore in New Zealand too, but we just choose not to extract it. So,
and I don't think we were using that oil for petroleum products anyway.
We're not using a cold burning Huntley either. Last time.
That's true. That is true. That is true. Anyway, let's get into the news of the week before we get into a full-on petrol versus electric debate. I do like petrol and diesel vehicles. I know. I just see the logic in the EV ones. Now, speaking of a resource that is causing us a bit of a problem, tyres. Which we could turn those into petrol. In fact, I think they have found ways you technically could. Regulation approved to manage old tyres. So regulations have now been approved that will change the way New Zealand manages around 6.5 million tyres each year that reach the end of their life. It is the final step in the government-backed Tyre-wise Regulated Product Stewardship Scheme, with controls on what tyres can be imported and sold in New Zealand and how old tyres are managed. So quite the big program there. I do believe now you are paying $665 plus GST per passenger car tyre. Trying to remember if is that charged at registration on imports that come in, Graham, or is that?
I actually don't know. I'm going to just profess ignorance there for a second, but the tyre-wise scheme has gone through so many different variations, changes, proposals, and what is it? Must be at least. I'm going to say it's at least 10 years on now. It might be longer than that, this particular series of proposals. And I'm actually lost now as to where it's ended up. Look, the age I remember most tyre shops charge you about $10 disposal fee now for your old tyres. That seems to be the sort of the run-of-the-mill charge.
Yeah, so I think now what's happening is when you import a tyre, you've got to pay that fee on it. And that basically goes around to making sure that the problem is solved at the other end. I believe they're going to start putting a fee on registration of vehicles as well. So I think you end up with about another $30 on a registration, first-time registration into the country to account for those tyres. That goes into a fund to basically deal with cleaning up tyres. It's a smart way of doing it. I suspect we're going to see something come on eventually in a similar way for electric vehicle batteries and hybrid batteries, which I think is also a smart move. We've got to take care of these things ourselves. But yeah, it's taken a very long time to get there. I think they were underway with this a couple of years after, about 2011, 2012? You probably saw a bit of it move through in your time with VIA there, Graham. It's no one likes an extra charge, but I think that one is actually going to be run relatively right, and we'll see how it goes. Now,
I think the concept of product stewardship is one that a lot of people are not familiar with, particularly in the trade. Older traders are not familiar with that particular concept, but it's one that's been coming at us for a very long time, and it's not even necessarily a green initiative. Sometimes I think it gets tarnished with the idea, well, it's just the bloody Greens at it again, hate that, It actually comes down, I think, just to common sense. We know that things like tyres and batteries, I think in particular, we know they're really hazardous, very difficult items to dispose of. We know time and time again we see things like tyre dumps and battery dumps and stuff where stuff just isn't being disposed of in the way that we'd like to see it or it should be. And it's very clear that we can't manage it on the should we right attitude, and it does need regulation. So I think most dealers or most importers, if they look close inside their own heart, will say to themselves, you know what, this is probably needed. I don't necessarily like the extra fee structure or I don't like the paperwork involved in it, but it actually is a worthwhile scheme, and I'd like to see it supported.
Yep, no, definitely. Now, speaking of those utes, those are owned by Inchcape. Inchcape's reports continued growth in the third quarter of 2023. UK-based automotive multinational Inchcape has achieved a revenue of £2.8 billion in the third quarter of 2023, with 35% reported growth and 10% organic revenue growth. Inchcape says its distribution business achieved 30% organic revenue growth with continued momentum in Asia and Pacific markets. They, of course, bought Great Lake Motor Distributors, and they've also gone big in the Philippines, East Africa, a few other places. Not saying we're not part of their third world kind of investments, but who knows? Interestingly, if anyone's looking for a job, Inchcape are on a real hiring spree at the moment. They've picked up a number of dealerships with that deal with Great Lake Motor Distributors, so they're looking for some heads of retail, some dealer principals, all sorts of stuff like that. So if you're looking for a job, Automotive Employment New Zealand, I think, is covering those, and worth having a look. Now, some good news from the dealer space. Gilchrist wins Giltrap Motorsport Junior Scholarship. So Matakana's Brock Gilchrist has beaten 38 other applicants for the inaugural Giltrap Motorsport Junior Scholarship, which will allow him to contest the GTNZ season fully funded in the SP Tools McLaren 570S GT4. The scholarship is a new project undertaken by the Giltrap Group to further develop local motorsport talent, and it accepts applications from young drivers aged from 16 to 25. Gilchrist was named the winner by McLaren Racing Chief Executive Zach Brown during a live broadcast from the UK at the gala opening of Garage 66 in Great North Road. Dylan Grant, 18, was named the reserve driver, and he received a $5,000 motorsport grant. Supported by McLaren Auckland, the Giltrap Motorsport Junior Scholarship will ensure Gilchrist has the most professional support available, including pit crew, management, and media training. So that is some pretty darn cool news. Giltrap Motorsport team principal Owen Evans says he is confident that Gilchrist was the perfect candidate for the hotly contested seat in the SP Tools car. So he's a Formula 86 Series Championship. Again, that's just kicking off as well. I think interestingly this year, and not sure if you got any connection to this anymore, Graham, I think there's 4 young women competing in the Toyota 86 Series this year. So much New Zealand industry support for motorsport. Really great to see. And what an amazing opportunity for this young chap.
Can I put a little plug in there, actually? Just thinking about that.
Absolutely.
I've got a really good friend of mine. In fact, my daughter's bestie from kindergarten, who's just turned 21, and she is just missed out on a sponsored ride for the 86 Series. Up and coming talent through karting, through all sorts of different series. She's running on an absolute just fumes and shoestrings with her motorsport career, and defied all the odds. And she's just missed out on a ride, and it's as much through circumstance as it is through her exceptional talent. So if you're looking for somebody out there that you'd like to put into your car and you want to increase the exposure of women in motorsport, and the 86 Series we know is going to be pretty hotly contested and pretty well watched, give me a call, because I think she's certainly one to watch. Jordan Wallace. Jordan has been involved, as I said, from motorsport since she was about 3 years old and got strapped into a kart. And I can't think of a lot more deserving people that have come up through their own talent and their own financial assistance as a family, and right on the cusp of breaking into the 86 Series, and as I said, has just missed out. So if you're looking for someone to get and support, and that you know will give you value back for your sponsorship, she's definitely a good candidate for that.
Yes, awesome. You must get a few approaches for sponsorship down there, Amos?
Yeah, we do. We do get a lot. I think naturally when you just put your head up above the pit, you just get a lot of applicants, and especially even through the dealership side of the motorbikes we do. But I just think any of that stuff is amazing. The stuff that like Giltrap does for those young drivers or anyone else putting their name on cars, it's just the progression of New Zealand talent, which you can see now across the world. It's so cool, really cool.
Do you guys reckon it's a good business decision to get into those things, or do you think it's more altruistic than anything else?
We track ROI everywhere, and any experience we've had from that side hasn't had much of a return. So I think it's a passion thing, and I think it's people with a bit of money and they realise that and think, yeah, I'm going to give back. That's what I think a lot of that motorsport is, or it's someone funding their own team and they have different cars, cars within that team, and that's what progresses that talent through that otherwise might not be able to pay themselves. That's what's amazing.
Yeah, did you guys get much return when Croydon was spending big bucks on running multiple drag cars, Graham, or was it just a lot of fun?
No, it actually, so back in the day, and Amos is absolutely right, it's got to be very, very targeted. Back in the day, it was a huge revenue earner for the business. It was exposure at a time when there was an explosion of JDM vehicles available on the market, sporty JDM stuff, and we became the sort of the household name, I suppose, up here in Auckland for a Skyline or a Sylvia or even Primeras and things, hot Primera TEs and things like that. And we used to say to people, it wasn't just that people would go in and try and buy a Skyline, but when they were trying to buy a family car and they're 25, 26 and they're just starting out and they're not going to buy a brand new, they've got $6,000 to $10,000 to spend. The household name that the drag racing scene brought us meant they'd probably been down at the track and seen us race, or they'd seen us in Performance Car Magazine, or they'd seen everything, and it just made that brand recognition stand out from the others. And they'd turn up and they wouldn't buy the Skyline from us; they'd just go and buy a Honda Civic sedan, but it had the Croydon nameplate on it and the Croydon T, and they could talk about Skylines and go away happy. So yeah, but that fell away as quickly as it started too, when the JDM, I suppose the motorsport JDM rush finished in a drag racing sense. So did the buyer base as well. So it is such a difficult thing to target carefully if you're looking at it for a proper ROI. And Amos, again, you would know exactly the pros and the cons of that. You've got to be onto it at every level and see what the return's going to bring.
Bet you wish you could get some of those cars again at the prices you're paying for them back then.
Mate, yeah.
Man, we've had that conversation before. Funnily enough, actually, we did a number of GTRs, R32 GTRs. I was talking to somebody just a couple of days ago. Out of the ones that we did, I think half of the GTRs we imported are still with the original owners that we sold them to all those years ago.
That's cool.
Just quite neat, sort of following those progression stories.
Yeah, I know a few people like that who still have their childhood car or their teenage car as such. Yeah. Right, a couple of other stories. Mercedes-Benz Australia Pacific boss returning to Germany. German national Florian Seidler, who heads up Mercedes-Benz Australia Pacific, which includes New Zealand, located in Mulgrave, Victoria, is returning to his home country as the head of sales operations for Mercedes-Benz Europe and Smart from January 2024. Seidler replaced Horst von Sanden in 2021 and was responsible for instituting the agency sales model into both the Australian and New Zealand retail networks, which has been somewhat controversial. They had to deal with a huge court case over there, which I believe they've just won, so that's probably why he's going home victorious.
He packed his suitcase and got out under the cover of darkness before the dealers found him.
Yeah, I think the dealers were wanting several $100 million, and they won. Mercedes won the case, I believe. So he's probably quite
some very bad blood.
He's quite popular back at head office, I suspect. You read more about that at autotalk.com.au. Now, we love competition. Global auto parts supplier to open Wellington branch. Global auto parts supplier Only Drive is entering the New Zealand market with a new branch set to open in Wellington. Founded in 2010, Only Drive serves customers in 20 different countries. It saw an opportunity to grow its international footprint in New Zealand due to the country's robust automotive market and demand for reliable and high-quality auto parts, says the press release, probably. I'm not going to do that next one. Only Drive Chief Executive Alex Turner says research indicated a gap in the New Zealand market for a supplier that could provide a wide range of high-quality auto parts at competitive prices. I'm saying this again. Blah, blah, blah. So do we need more competition in the parts market, Graham? Are you happy with the price you're paying for parts lately?
I was going to say, look, all credit to them for opening up. I'm not going to bag that for a second. Competition's good, but I've also got to say the market's pretty well catered for. And I think ChatGPT could have written that press release because everyone's who doesn't want affordable parts, right? Within a stone's throw of here, I'm looking at a Repco just down the road out my window here. We've got a Napa, we've got a BNT, we've got a Partmaster down the road.
Don't forget that all 6 of those names that you just round off, I think, are 3 companies.
Quite possibly so. But you could argue and say, well, the whole supermarket debate. How many more supermarkets do you want to compete in that particular space that are going to make an effective difference too? As far as I can tell, there's no real gap in the parts market in New Zealand that could be successfully plugged or commercially plugged without delivering the same sort of timeframes and cost structure, just because we're a small little island floating around the middle of the bottom of the world.
No, exactly. What's the bike part market like? Parts market like, Amos? I got a funny feeling that if you're riding along at 150k an hour on something that sits between your legs, you're probably going to want to spend a little more on parts, like go with a slightly more quality option.
Yeah. Make sure it's right, eh? Yeah, no, it's good. Obviously, it's really well catered for in Australia, and it's very easy to get down. And obviously, and they do have a lot in Auckland as well. So even for Christchurch or South Island, it's pretty quick. So if it's here, that's great. That's obviously the real, high turnover items. But if it's not here, stuff can get here pretty quick. And I think that wouldn't be brand specific as well. That would be, across the board. With Australia, you have just such that bigger population, so you have obviously naturally a lot of the product, Yeah. So as long as you're okay with a couple of days wait, it's pretty good across the board.
Yeah. Now, the next story, Graham, is your colleague Glenn around?
Yeah. Well, no, not in the office of the obviously, but yes, he's here. Yes.
So I've finally driven the Honda CR-V, which he wanted to know about. Though I think he's gone off and bought something else at the end, hasn't he?
Well, he's got a new CR-V, but not an.
Oh, he did get one in the end. Oh, great. Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah. But
so
not an electric one.
No. So Honda has launched a new CR-V, and I think the key point of my story here is it's still a CR-V. They, a lot of these companies keep trying to reinvent things. Honda, I think, has been very good at just keeping their cars pretty much the same, in the best possible way. This is a really nice car. Interestingly, having a chat to the managing director, Nobu, they are indicating they're expecting some delayed deliveries because the petrol turbo ones do receive a small fee. The hybrids are neutral. But yeah, 3 levels of vehicle there. The all-wheel drive one, oddly, is the cheapest. You can have it as a all-wheel drive 5-seater and 2-wheel drive 7-seater, or a flashy hybrid. I actually quite like driving the normal petrol one. It was a pretty decent car. I drove it through the Lewis Pass the other week. Popped in to see Amos the next day. But yeah, good looking car. It's a Honda in the best possible way, and I think they're going to move quite a lot. I think in the first hour of taking pre-orders, they did like 110, and they think they're going to do 800 in the next 6 months. So that's not bad for a not electric car these days. Yeah, comfortable. Is there much call for CR-Vs? Do people ask for them? Can you even get this one out of Japan, or is it a non-Japan model?
Haven't even looked. A lot of that late model SUV stuff out of Japan, and it's a funny conversation because we're just talking the day about RAV4s. Just had some time spent in a RAV4 Prime, so a PHEV Prime, and I've got to say, what a mighty machine that was. That was a seriously impressive vehicle, seriously impressive. And they've just come down a bit in pricing in Japan now to make them, I suppose, a little bit more affordable to touch into the New Zealand marketplace. You can just see why people have gone down that particular pathway. Not so popular in Japan, as it turns out, the plug-in ones. The Prius, the RAV, this is talking RAV4, sorry. The RAV4 hybrid, absolutely, but the RAV4 plug-in and the Prime, they are an amazing vehicle for New Zealand. And that whole crossover idea between, it can be an EV because the range is not too bad. For an EV, it's really not too bad at all for a PHEV.
What are they retailing at?
So we just sold a used one for in the mid 60s territory for a very late model low K high spec one. The only feature it didn't have was the sunroof, the Pano sunroof. Otherwise, it had everything. But I was just going to say, what a mighty machine that was. And if you think I'm a little bit EV touchy, I'm not. I respect a good vehicle for the sake of whatever it is. But this to me seemed to be the perfect combination of things for a New Zealand marketplace, and that the range was quite acceptable. And its economy as a hybrid was great, and its drivability was just sensational. What a great machine. So the CR-V is going to have a reasonably high bar being set by plugins and by hybrids in that space for what's deemed to be the sort of first tier Japanese SUV marketplace. Very
Interesting move by Honda. Their hybrid system is called the EHEV.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear why they've used that name? Just use it. No, I bought an EHEV.
EHEV.
Sounds like a PHEV, doesn't it?
Well,
it took some of us at the launch a while to actually listen closely in the auditorium to work out whether by auditorium I mean the shed to understand they were saying EHEV, not PHEV. They've pulled a bit of a trick there.
Mm-hmm. And the public by and large, and unless they're particularly well researched when they arrive, most people still don't know the difference in the various acronyms, and they're referred to either as a battery car, or they know what a hybrid is, or it's a battery car, or it's a put a plug-in car. We start referring to acronyms in the eyes that have glazed over, and everyone just goes to sleep again. So we still have some way to go there in terms of industry speak versus everyday Kiwi speak.
Right, last couple of stories, and they are electrified, Graham, so you can just close your ears for a second. We have BYD's released the pricing on the Seal. You can get one of those for $62,990 for a fully electric mid-sized sedan, and it's the top of the line one is pretty darn fast. I put together a video there and interviewed BYD's Warren Wilmot. They're getting a bit of jip because the car is more expensive than Australia, but then so is virtually any car more than Australia. Imagine your bikes are more expensive here than they are in Australia, Amos.
Same everywhere. Yeah, same as cars.
Yep. And if you do want to read a bit more about some EVs, the latest EVs and Beyond magazine is out now. You can go and download that for free at evsandbeyond.co.nz. Did a fun little road trip in a BYD Dolphin, looked at the Audi e-tron Q4, a few other things there. A bit of fun. Great to keep an eye on that side of the market. Right, that's that for this week. Hopefully, some of you people out there in Dealerland will actually be back at work next week. And you can have some, well, actually, probably more importantly, some government people back in. I think until we get a new government, we're still kind of just in holding pattern for a lot of the kind of regulatory, businessy stuff. No one wants to make a move. Though
they can't. They really can't. So we've got two big things coming up. So there's the game of kicking a ball around a field with a few people on one side and a few on the other coming up on Sunday morning. I suspect won't be a lot of dealership business going on Sunday morning anywhere. Just saying. And then it's the third is the special votes total is announced, and I think that'll have a significant impact.
Could be early. It's the day they have to announce it by. It's not the day they announce it.
Well, I think they'll stick to protocol, Richard. I imagine it'll be the third, and then there'll be a couple of days with the finagling from there. So we're not quite out of the woods yet.
No, I think we'll get a government pretty quick after that, though. I don't think Luxon's going to mess around.
No, he won't. As much of the media is jumping up and down about how they handle the negotiations in secret, and they're not including it. Well, sorry guys, but I don't know why we should. I think the outcome of that's going to be, as you said, that Luxon will move quickly and swiftly. Once those votes have been decided, he'll have all the different options lined up. It'll be option A, option B, option C, depending on which way the specials fall, and then the decision. Because everyone's aware of just how much chaos was caused the last time we waited for 3 months for a decision.
Yeah, give Winnie foreign affairs and a provincial growth fund, and he'll be happy. And I think the bigger question is going to be ACT. So, yeah. Are you expecting finance applications to go up the day after we announce the new government, Amos?
Oh, I hope so, hope so. Sure, you give Winnie racing as well, don't you?
This is true.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. He loves a good excuse to go and watch the ponies.
Yeah.
Awesome. Look, cool. Thank you very much, everyone. It's a bit of a shorter one this week, but just because it's quiet out there. It's quiet. We will catch everyone next week on the AutoTalk Weekly Wrap.